shouldn't be down here. I just found this passage behind a wall in the master bedroom. The house has been dead quiet all day, but ever since I opened this thing, I keep hearing whispers. I don't know if it's just the wind or something else. I feel like I'm not alone, and that feeling is just getting stronger the deeper I go. I just have to see what's down here. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. 2 months ago, I inherited my family's old home from my great-aunt Alara. I hadn't seen her since I was a kid, and from the little my parents ever said, she'd become a total recluse in her later years. She never left the house and never had visitors. Her isolation was this well-known family tragedy. When her will was read, I was shocked she'd left the entire property to me. But there was a bizarre catch. I had to live in the house for 1 full year before I could sell it. If I left before that, the house and everything in it would go to the state. And at first, it honestly felt like a gift, a huge Victorian-era house, mortgage-free. It was overwhelming, but it was a fresh start. The second I stepped inside, though, that optimism started to fade. The air was heavy, thick with the smell of dust, and something else. Something kind of floral, like dying potpourri. But the silence was the worst part. It wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was a deep, crazy listening silence that felt like it was waiting. Every room was filled with antique furniture covered in white sheets, making them look like a meeting of ghosts. And the portraits. So many portraits of ancestors I'd never met, and their painted eyes just seemed to follow me down the halls. The first few weeks were a blur of just unpacking and cleaning. I tried to make the place feel like mine, but it was like the house was resisting me. I'd tell myself the faint noises at night were just the old structure settling. That feeling of being watched was just my imagination, right? A product of being alone in such a huge, unfamiliar space. That's what I told myself anyway. That loneliness my great-aunt Alara must have felt here started to feel less like a story and more like a presence. A chill that got right into my bones. I was starting to understand how isolation could wear a person down, how the quiet could start to find a voice of its own. Of course, things felt weird, but the first really strange thing happened about a month in. I was in the library, a room paneled with dark wood from floor to ceiling, trying to sort through Alara's huge book collection. As I reached for a heavy leather-bound book, my foot caught the edge of the rug. I stumbled and knocked over a little side table. When I put my hand down to catch myself, I felt a floorboard shift. It was loose. I couldn't help myself. I worked my fingers into the seam, the old wood groaning. With one last pull, the board came free. I was expecting to see a dusty crawl space, maybe some old pipes. Instead, my fingers hit cold metal. Inside was a small, ornate iron box, and of course it was locked. For days, that box became my obsession. I tore through every drawer and cabinet looking for a key, but found nothing. Finally, totally frustrated, I just started pulling books off the shelves and shaking them, hoping something would fall out. And tucked inside a copy of Poe's Tales of Mystery and Imagination, a tiny rusted key fell onto the carpet. My heart was hammering as I slid the key into the lock. It turned with this really satisfying click. I lifted the lid, half expecting old letters or maybe some forgotten jewelry. But the box was almost empty. All it held was a single piece of yellowed, brittle parchment, folded neatly. I carefully unfolded it. It was a hand-drawn map of the ground floor of the house. But it was wrong. It showed a room that I knew didn't exist. According to this drawing, there should have been a small pantry connected to the kitchen, right where a large built-in spice cabinet was. I took the map to the kitchen and just stared at the wall. I measured it. I knocked on it. The measurements on the map were exact. The space was right there. And when I knocked, the sound was hollow. Okay, before I tell you what I did next, and what I found, I have to warn you, this is where the story gets complicated. If you want to follow this journey to the end, think about subscribing. Your support genuinely helps me feel a little less alone in all of this. I couldn't let it go. I mean, a hidden room? The thought was just all-consuming. I got a crowbar from the tool shed, and taking a deep breath, started prying the spice cabinet off the wall. Behind it was just old, stained plaster. I only hesitated for a second before I grabbed a hammer and just went for it. The plaster cracked and crumbled, and this dark, empty space opened up. The air that came out of it was stale and ancient. It was a small, stone-floored room, and it was completely bare. For a second, I just felt this wave of disappointment, like all that for nothing. But then my flashlight beam hit something on the far wall. Etched into the stone, just like the first map, was another diagram. This one was of the second floor. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just some forgotten pantry. This was a system, a network of secrets. The new map showed the master bedroom, where I'd been sleeping, and behind the wall where my bed was, there was a clearly marked passage. This was the exact moment the house went from just being unsettling to feeling genuinely threatening. What was my great-aunt doing? What was she building? That night, sleep was impossible. I just lay in bed, staring at the wall, my imagination going wild. The next morning, running on a mix of terror and adrenaline, I shoved the heavy oak bed frame away from the wall. I ran my hands over the floral wallpaper, feeling for anything, any imperfection. And there it was. A faint, nearly invisible seam. When I pressed it, a part of the wall just clicked and swung inward, revealing that dark, narrow opening you saw at the beginning. It led down, into the foundation of the house. That was the passage from the intro. That's where everything really started to fall apart. Stepping into that passage was like stepping into another world. The air got cold and damp, and the silence of the house was replaced by this low hum. And the whispers, they were clearer in here. Not words, but these overlapping, hissing sounds, like secrets being told just out of reach. I kept trying to tell myself it was just a draft, the house breathing. But the feeling of being watched just got worse with every step I took. This is where my memory gets a little fuzzy. I don't remember walking for that long, but the passage just opened up, and I was standing in a room I'd never seen before. It wasn't on any blueprint. The air was thick with the smell of decay. It was a child's nursery. Everything was covered in this thick gray dust that just seemed to eat the light from my flashlight. A small wooden rocking horse stood frozen in the middle of the room, one of its painted eyes staring into the dark. In the corner, a crib was filled with what looked like dried leaves. I was just hit by this wave of incredible sadness and fear. Whose room was this? Why was it hidden away, erased from the house's memory? As I stood there, I got so dizzy, and the whispers in the walls got sharper. It was like they were coming together into a single sound, almost a meme, but I couldn't quite catch it before it slipped away. I felt this primal need to just run. I turned and scrambled back up the passage, my breath catching in my throat. When I burst back into my bedroom, I slammed the hidden door shut. I leaned against it, shaking. After a few minutes, I dared to look back. I swear the passage had changed. The opening looked narrower. The slope felt steeper. It's impossible, I know. It had to be my mind, just fracturing from the fear and isolation. I started to wonder if my great-aunt Alara wasn't just a recluse. Maybe she was a prisoner in her own home. Not held by the walls, but by her own mind. Maybe this house does something to people who live in it alone for too long. Maybe it's doing it to me. I'm back in the main part of the house now, but nothing feels the same. The silence isn't empty anymore. It's filled with the memory of those whispers. I can't get the image of that dusty nursery out of my head. Before I ran out of that room, I saw something on a small, decaying nightstand next to the crib. A small book, bound in dark leather. A diary. In my panic, I grabbed it. I don't even remember doing it, but here it is. It's held shut by a small, tarnished brass lock. The whispers haven't stopped. If anything, since I brought this diary out of the wall, I think they're getting clearer. I keep thinking I hear a name. A little girl's name. I don't know if I should try to open this book. I'm terrified of what's inside. Is this the key to understanding everything? Or is it just full of the ramblings of someone else this house drove mad? What do you all think? Should I try to find a way to open it? Let me know what you would do in the comments below. And please subscribe if you want to see what happens next. I have a terrible feeling this is only the beginning. I'm not done with you yet.